Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, college football fans across the nation and around the world. This is Tim May with the Tim May Show. Usually it's featuring Clay Hall, but Clay is, as you heard on Monday's show, following Ohio State's 24-6 win at Washington. Clay joined me from a remote down in South Carolina, but, he's they're having funeral services for his father who passed away at the end of last week. And my thoughts and prayers go out to Clay Hall and his family, especially his elderly mother. And we'll just move on from there. Clay will be back by the end of the week because he is, for want of another term, a trooper. I just hope a state trooper doesn't pull him over on his way hurtling back from the Southland to the Northland. But I digress. This is the Tim May Show. And, of course, coming up, as I usually do, every week, except this was delayed by a couple of days because of scheduling conflicts for me. But Matt Wilhelm, former Ohio State All-American linebacker, former Super Bowl champion linebacker, will be joining the team again. He does it. He does it every week during the season. His insights, especially on this Ohio State defense, are worth listening to, and how you keep things rolling from here. But the fellas who are emerging, like Arvell Reese, are you kidding me? And, of course, the tour de force over the weekend of the Kadens. Kaden Curry named Defensive Player of the Week by four major entities after his ridiculous performance on Saturday at Washington. And Kayden McDonald, who, what was Ohio State going to do was the question mark I posed and others posed when it came to depth on the interior of that defensive line. But when your starter's playing like Kaden McDonald is playing, and they're not really playing as many plays, ladies and gentlemen, as the old days, he got in there and he at the end of the game, he made probably the seminal sack of the game when it really put the dagger in Washington, the Huskies, who were undefeated going into that game. But Ohio State more and more dominated as the game went on defensively, and then scored, 3 touchdowns and a field goal. So the way the two Cadens played kind of exemplified the play of the defense as a whole, not the least of which was the play also of Arvell Reese at linebacker, marauder, whatever term you want to give him. Boys, he really come on. And then, of course, Caleb Downs and everybody else ended up playing their usually stellar games. But back to the beginning, the interesting thing, definitely, Caden Curry has been waiting his time patiently at Ohio State as, JT Tuimoloau and Jack Sawyer opted not to leave last year and came back and won a national championship. That meant Caden Curry and Kenyatta Jackson had to once again wait their turn to step to the fore. Both of them have done so magnificently over the first 4 weeks of the first 4 games of the season. But Caden Curry, he's never had a game like he had at Washington. He had 11 tackles, personal best for him. He had 9 of those were solo tackles. He was in on 5 tackles for loss, including a career high 3 sacks. And it's part and parcel to Ohio State holding Washington and its dynamic dual threat quarterback, Damon Williams, holding the Huskies to just 234 yards of total offense. That's crazy. And yes, the Ohio State offense has had a couple of better outings this year than it had Saturday in terms of just largesse. But first-year starting quarterback, second-year player, Julian Sayin, well, all he does right now is lead the nation in completion percentage with a 78.8 percentage. That's stunning at whatever level against whomever you're playing. And he's number 4 in the nation with a quarterback rating of 189.81. In my book, anything over 150, 160 is pretty good for a season. 189.81 is very, very, very good, as you can tell. I added a third very in there. That's how very good it is. And then, of course, Bo Jackson just keeps on going because Day knows Bo. I just like saying that. Ryan Day knows Bo. The coaches do. But Ryan Day reiterated this week, just like he's been saying, this idea that you just turn it over to a freshman running back And that's that. You don't do that in a 16-game season, which is what the Buckeyes intend on playing, just like they did a year ago. C.J. Donaldson, had a touchdown, caught that swing pass off to the right from Julian Sayin. Julian Sayin and the offense got the running backs involved in the receiving game. All three running backs, including James Peoples, caught passes out of the backfield to augment the throws to Jeremiah Smith and the wide receivers and to tight end Max Clare. But the bottom line is, or Wilkes Merrick also, the bottom line is 9 different players caught passes from Julian Sayin against the Huskies. So the wide range of this offense, it's hard to really go on full plumage when you only have six possessions in a game. And of course, Ohio State gave one away when Brandon Ennis had that real snappy punt return after Ohio State forced a punt from Washington. He had that snappy punt return only to get hit at the end of it and fumble the ball away and give Washington another possession there in the first half. That and Ohio State getting stuffed on 4th and 1 when C.J. Donaldson got stopped at the goal line when they tried to run pretty much the same play they ran against Texas for the first touchdown of the year with C.J. Donaldson. Who knew, as I talked to Matt Wilhelm about too, who knew that Washington was going to see that on tape and just have an extra guy at the scene of the alleged or proposed crime, and they did. But so it made for a clunky first half that finally got on the rails when Julian Sayin hit Jeremiah Smith on a little crossing, little screen, a little tunnel screen. I basically drag route over the middle, and he turned it up for an 18-yard touchdown play. As I said, the only thing wrong with the offense in the first half was they needed to get the ball to Jeremiah Smith a little bit more, and they did. And then he ended up obviously with 4 or 5 catches on the first possession of the second half as the Buckeyes steadily took control of the game. But Ohio State's going into homecoming this week. It's welcoming also the 10 inductees into the Ohio State Athletic Hall of Fame. And in my opinion, leading that class is Billy Price, who was part and parcel to Ohio State winning that national championship in 2014. The way he played, he set a school record with 55 straight starts, some at guard, some at center. But Billy Price was a man among men back in those days. And, he's finally stepping into the Ohio State Athletics Hall of Fame. Well, finally, that's only 11 years ago, right? So you didn't have to wait that long. But the bottom line is it's a stellar Hall of Fame class. It includes all sports are eligible for it. But Billy Price getting his just due this coming weekend as the Buckeyes host Minnesota. PJ Fleck's team, which is off to a 3-1 start, coming off a come-from-behind win, if I remember correctly, over Rutgers in their own Big Ten opener over the weekend. But really good quarterback who's really coming into his own. A guy from Fayetteville, Arkansas, which for some reason Arkansas didn't want. Maybe that's why Arkansas is looking for a new head coach in the middle of the season this week, with Sam Pittman being fired, one of now a growing list of coaches being fired before halfway through the season, and then being replaced there. I mean, it's crazy kind of what college football programs are going through right now, trying to keep up with the Joneses. And so we'll see where that goes, but it'll be interesting. Minnesota's coming in feeling pretty confident about itself. Of course, PJ Fleck was a graduate assistant under the Jim Tressel on the Jim Tressel staff back in the 2000s, and did a great job before he struck out on his own, became a head coach, including at Western Michigan and in Minnesota. He's steadily built that program at Minnesota. Is it on the level with Ohio State or Alabama or Georgia or Texas? Right now, no, it's not, but it's playing at a high level of football compared to where it was maybe when he took over. So it's going to be an interesting homecoming game for the Buckeyes. And interesting more than that, it's Ohio State, as I've told you guys before, guys and gals. before. It's Ohio State's only home game in the month of October. Kind of crazy when you think about it. They go on the road next week to play at Illinois, and then the week after that to play at Wisconsin before an off week, and they come back to host wincing Penn State, which once again lost a game in the James Franklin era, lost a game to a top 5 team. It's a pretty sad record that James Franklin has against them, but otherwise, Penn State was picked by a lot of people to be the Big Ten champion this year. This was the year they were going to get that weight off their back of losing the truly big games. And now here they sit after getting beat by Oregon in double overtime. What a flip that was, because they came all the way back and then blew it in double overtime. And Drew Aller, their celebrated returning quarterback, and his company just couldn't get it done in the second overtime. I mean, the interception he threw was pretty sad, but it is what it is. So they will be looking to come into Ohio State and try to fix that record against top 5 teams, obviously, because it looks like Ohio State should hold sway these next 3 weeks, but you never take anything for granted in college football. Just ask Georgia. Here's Alabama. Everybody was kicking Kalen DeBoer to the curb and kicking him really hard to the curb after that opening loss to Florida State. And what does Alabama do? It goes to Georgia and wins, and boom! All of a sudden, Kalen DeBoer is celebrated in Tuscaloosa, and Kirby Smart, whose Georgia teams have beaten Alabama just once in 11 tries, one time. Now, in that span, they've also won 2 national championships back to back, as we all know, in 2021 and I think it was 2020 and 2021, whatever the years were, 2021 and 2022. But the bottom line is, yes, as this season progresses, a lot of people are smarting. Look at Indiana, the way it came back and beat Iowa. I mean, Indiana is the team to be reckoned with in the Big Ten. And for Ohio State's sake, the only time it would play Indiana this year in the, quote, almost regular season would be in a Big Ten championship game if they both get there. And who knows what's going to happen in the playoffs. But Indiana, under Kurt Cignetti, showing it is for real, coming off a huge win, one-sided win over Illinois, and then hanging on and beating Iowa. And then, of course, Illinois bouncing back with a win over Southern California. I think Southern California has really stepped up compared to last year and the year before that. But Illinois showed its true mettle by stepping up after coming off an embarrassing loss to Indiana. So this Big Ten race, cliche, it's only getting started. It's just getting started. And for Ohio State now, running from the front along with Indiana, it'll be interesting to see how this goes with Indiana, and Oregon. So the Big Ten race promises to be a brouhaha as this goes along, because of course Ohio State does not play Indiana this year in the regular season and does not play Oregon. But with that said, let's get to my weekly conversation with Matt Wilhelm, because we talked about how well this Ohio State defense is playing, and that's putting it mildly. But just the way they took more and more control, like a tourniquet, of that game the other day in Husky Stadium. You had to be there. The place was raucous. Like I said a while ago, it was the largest crowd since 2010 in that place, and since 2010 the capacity has been lessened by some of the improvements they made there. But the bottom line was there probably were at least 10,000 Ohio State fans in attendance, maybe more. I posted a video after the game on Twitter where you could see I panned around as the team gathered to sing Carmen, Ohio in tradition. Tradition that Jim Tressel started way back in 2001 when he became the Ohio State head coach. But as they gathered to sing Carmen, Ohio, I panned around, and the only people left were Ohio State fans. And it was stunning how many there were just right in front of the team, but also scattered throughout the stadium. So Buckeye Nation is a real deal. Matt Wilhelm and I talk about that a little bit too. But without further ado, let's get to my weekly conversation with Matt Wilhelm. Man, I love my sessions once a week with Dr. Matt Wilhelm, Dr. D, Dr.
Football doctor only.
Yeah, football doctor, but football doctor of football defense. Matt Wilhelm, welcome once again to the Tim May Show featuring Clay Hall, my brother.
Great to be with you. Great to be talking about another Buckeye victory.
By the way, if you were my brother, you'd be my super, super, super baby brother.
Yes.
But I do consider you quite the friend, as you well know. But then on top
Absolutely.
of that, quite the expert on all things football. But let's just get right down to it, man. Ohio State's number one in the country in defense against the score, the number one defensive stat ever, will always be undefeated in terms of the number one defensive stat. How many points do you give up per game? And of course, that's a combo with a lot of things, including hanging onto the football with your offense. But then number 8 in total defense. And Matt, I've said this before on this show. I've even said this to you. It sounds funny. I really enjoy watching Ohio State play defense. Is there something wrong with me?
No, not at all. And I mean, again, it's what I love about Ohio. As much as the offensive playmakers, bring a smile to our face when they score, 40, 50 points, it's the way in which they play defense. And again, it's not that they haven't, but they're the silver bullet defense that we all kind of grew up on, the 90s and the 2000s, and you can rattle off the names that were a part of it that you thought defined what the silver bullet defense really meant and stood for. And these guys are living up to that expectation, and in preparation, for this show, Tim, I think the one thing that I think is most impressive about Ohio State, before we get into the weeds about, statistics and the game against Washington.
Wait, let me interrupt. You could take any exit, driveway, shoulder you want to go off on. Go ahead now.
Well, good. Well, I think what this leads me down the road to kind of claim at this point, being 4-0, with all these guys that are playing at a very, very high level, this is a testament to what Ohio State is in the recruiting marketplace, the job that Mark Pantoni and his staff do each and every year to reload the cupboards with guys. And I know that I've talked about it, and I think it's what's most exciting about this defense is, it's not necessarily Davidson Igbinosun or Caleb Downs, although they're great football players. What I love most is, and it's what Ohio State, and when they claim development, as a program and what they do, and then they talk about the NFL too, is all those guys that we had come back that aided last year's football team to go win that national championship, okay, which is fantastic. 14 guys get drafted, almost all 4 guys along that defensive front. And then there's these, I don't want to say unnamed guys, these guys that have flashed in past years, in backup situations when someone's injured, when the game's a little bit out of hand, you see a little bit more of these guys. That's rattling off the names, the Arvell Reese, the Caden Currys, the McDonald, Will Smith Jr. Like, again,
Kenyatta Jackson.
Kenyatta Jackson. It's now their time.
Yeah.
And they're delivering in the scarlet and gray. So they've been primed, and recruited from wherever they are, they went to high school to come to Ohio State for a specific reason. A lot of these guys, in some cases, I'm sure it's usually probably maybe not them, but maybe family members or, some people, within their close circle might have go, why do you want to sit and wait when you can go start? And they rattle off a number of other schools they could have gone to. And they just go, man, I'm just waiting my time, because when it comes, they're ready. And I think that's what I have the most pride about, because this is a top to bottom football team, and the way that it's been constructed, it's not just a bunch of star players. I think also on the flip side that, the ability to go into the portal and grab a guy like CJ Donaldson that kind of stabilizes a young running back room with the emergence of Peoples and the emergence of Bo Jackson. So that's where I kind of wanted to start. Is I just love that these guys, and you didn't hear a bunch of bitching and complaining about, man, I wish I could be sharing time with Jack Sawyer. Yeah. Man, I wish I could be, I'm better than so-and-so. You didn't hear it. They just shut up. They put their heads down and they worked. And when their time came, which is now, they're showing out. And I just love that about again, the brotherhood that they talk about, the culture at Ohio State, what Ryan Day and their now even new coordinators, along with Mark Pantoni and his staff, have constructed, not just this season, because this season is, has been waiting. These guys have been waiting in the wings for multiple years, developing with Mickey Marotti and developing with their position coach, and just wait and get developing, with Coach Johnson and developing with with Coach Hartline. And it's like, bam, it's your time.
Yep.
And they perform. And that's a testament to all those people that I just rattled off, and a testament to the young men too, to wait and believe in what the Buckeye Brotherhood really stands for. And when they get their time, they're delivering.
All right. In that genre, then, let's give out an award here 4 games into the season. Only one guy. Don't name me 5. Don't name 5. Name me one guy. I'm going to name you my guy. And if your guy's the same guy, that's good.
Sure.
The one guy that I was not sure could be what he is going into this season. I was about to name 4 other guys that I was going to give you examples of. The one guy, and I don't know if it's the same guy as you, but he's from your same genre, is Arvell Reese. This is a guy, now all of a sudden people are discovering Arvell Reese. But clearly Matt Patricia and James Laurinaitis have figured out how to make this guy a marauder,
Yeah.
I mean, a terror for offensive coordinators and quarterbacks, et cetera. That's my guy who has really come on, but I can name you 10 others, right? But
Sure.
The bottom line is what he has brought now from where is that guy before this play starts, right? Number 8, where is number 8? Oh my God, that guy's scary looking. Somebody blocked number 8. That is that's amazing to me because he had the ability, but man, you see consistency. Go ahead.
No doubt. And I think, and again, I'll name my guy here in a minute. And I'm, again, for the sake of not being the same as you, I'll pick somebody different.
You can be the same. You're a linebacker. Yeah.
But really quick, the one thing that I want to, kind of tell everybody, and kind of convey is, the emergence of Arvell Reese has allowed Sonny Styles to be Sonny Styles, right?
Yeah.
And take the pressure off of, he's the guy that we must block. And that might be how you approached Ohio State's defense. Maybe, Texas probably thought we got to block number 0. We got to know where number 2 is on every play. And you just keep adding these layers. Now we've got to turn the protection to Kaden Curry. We've got to know, what look Caleb Downs has given us and where he's going to end up. Is he blitzing, or is he running to the middle of the field? Or is he going to play, be a half safety in Tampa 2? I don't know.
Yeah.
Arvell Reese. And I mean, to say he's a Swiss Army knife is kind of like doing him a disservice, right? Yes. He's like a machete.
He's like a Swiss Army ninja.
Sword. Yeah, like a ninja blade, like a samurai sword. Yeah. But again, I'll just say, like, number 0, Sonny Styles and Caleb Downs, in many cases, I'll say through the first 3 games, OU, Grambling, and Texas was like, where are those guys?
Yeah.
And then you have the emergence of this number 8 who just keeps showing up in the blitz game, showing up in coverage, showing up as a spy, which we saw against Washington. And his closing speed and my algorithm must know that I love Buckeye defense, because all I see is, Arvell Reese, showing up on every darn post on his closing speed against Washington and all the plays he's made all season. But it just keeps adding to the layers of this defense. And I talk about, as we're talking about defenses, again, Caden Curry. Where's Caden Curry? He's now 11 tackles, 9 solos, 3 sacks, 5 TFLs. It's like, okay, you just keep, how are you going to block them all? Yeah. If they're already, if we already have superior players, because as I kind of that detailed is like through that recruiting, and they're all kind of hitting. Matt Patricia now knows that too. He's going to hide some, and again, we're still going to get into our bag. We're only played 4 football games. Matt Patricia's got 25 years of NFL experience, so he's got schemes out the wazoo, and I'm sure we're running the concepts that the players have grasped as a unit.
Yep.
We're matching personnel groupings, which means, running guys in and running guys out and matching who they are offensively. And I would not be surprised that if, these troubles that we're creating for the offenses are only going to continue to evolve as the season goes on. And I think it's just a testament to, all the things that we talked about. The guy that I'm going to talk about that I was actually going to, early season, say pre-Texas, in the offseason through training camp, I'd probably say like Edric Houston was a guy that I thought was going to pop off, right? Yep. I've been a Caden Curry fan forever, so he's just doing what I thought he's already been able to do when he flashed behind, either Sawyer or JTT in years past. But the guy, Kayden McDonald, Kayden McDonald's another guy. Kayden McDonald's another guy, again, super productive against Washington, and that's why it may be fresh in a lot of people's head. But he's just a guy that has been waiting in the wings behind Ty Hamilton and Tyleik Williams in spot duty flashes. But I didn't think he would flash like this soon. So, but I also say on the flip side, that's the challenge for Matt Patricia and Arvell Reese and Caden McDonald and Kaden Curry is like, okay, you've been able, like, now you got the bullseye. Yep. Now you're going to get the protection. Now you're going to get, and this is where you kind of marry the front half of the defense with the back end of the defense is like, if I'm an offensive coordinator, I've got to leave one extra guy. I can't get the back out because the back's got to account for the blitz game of Arvell Reese, the blitz game of Sonny Styles, and account for, Chip and Caden Curry on the edge before maybe I get out into a late route. And that is so beneficial to the defensive backfield, with Matthews and Igbenogson and Caleb Downs as well.
Yeah, it was interesting because I watching it, I was watching from the press box, but watching that game at Washington, the adjustments too that Patricia and staff are making as the game goes on, because early on, Washington found these little seams, creases in the defense for the throwing game, when the pass rush wasn't quite getting there yet. And but they were, I like to call them sort of like intermediate, almost deep throws, but are thrown on time, it's really hard to stop them. But then all of a sudden, Patricia and staff close those little gaps, close those little seams, with Caleb Downs and the safeties very much involved in that. And then Washington had really no place to go.
Well, Tim, and to be honest with you, like, this is the one thing that I'll say, this is just, so you'll see a lot of teams who script their first 10 to 12 to 15 plays.
Yeah.
Use a lot of data and analytics to support what they're going to run early in the game. They're usually safe. The quarterback and the protections are usually comfortable with what they're going to get. And I think where the coach feels comfortable on scripting those plays is because based on data to support, it's like Ohio State's probably going to, in every game we've seen from them so far, they're going to come out kind of in a country cover 3, and we're going to attack those windows, right? Yes. Because they're trying to feel us out too. So that's where I think you see in some cases, in not just in this football game, but in football games in general, where an offense may have some success is because they're basing it off of their film study, and they constructed a plan to attack what they think they're going to get from a pass rush and or a cover standpoint. And it might be like, oh man, like they're really humming. And then all of a sudden, and that's the great teams in football, don't have to wait till halftime to make those adjustments. They can do them in between series. Yeah. And I think you see that out of Matt Patricia in this defense.
Yeah, it's fun to watch. I mean, I saw it, same thing with Jim Knowles last year and stuff. And, the thing I explained to people, I remember former Senator Bill Walsh said in on it was an internet clinic, but I listened to him talk about why you script games, and because he was pretty adamant about it, only because you like to throw things out there at the beginning just to see how the defense adjusts to what you're doing. And then you can like play off of that with your own nuance and stuff. And I think people don't understand sometimes when we say script, that doesn't mean, some things like some people think. It's more of, I want to see how their defense handles this formation and then this deployment from the standpoint out of that formation, and then go for there. And it's a good way to kind of set your bedrock for what's coming. But the interesting thing is when the defense is doing the exact same thing, now you got yourself a little chess match that's really fun to watch. And Matt Patricia so far with the pencil in his ear, I think is handling the chess match along with his coaches. Like I was telling somebody on the radio the other night, right after the game was over, I was on the sideline. I walked out to the middle of the field where everybody was mingling and stuff, and Larry Johnson standing there just sort of surveying the scene. He's just looking. And I woke up in my hand. I said, man, this whoever the defensive line coach is here, he must be a genius. And he knew what I was referring to.
Yeah.
And he turned around and he went, shh.
Yeah.
And because, the last several years, there's been one faction who I won't name who've been after trying to get rid of Larry Johnson. Dude, if you look at the way this defensive line group is playing right now, they finally are getting something out of Tywan Malone, for example, the transfer, 3 years in now, whatever it is, he's finally given them something. And that's just never given up on a guy, and vice versa. The guy never given up on you, right? And but like you're just talking about, the player development is alive and real at Ohio State. It's not going out and just purchasing players. I mean, like you just talked about Caden Curry, Kenyatta Jackson. Why did they stay? They could have gone. They could have left last year, but they're back, and now they are part and parcel to the number one defense in the country and the number one team in the country. I mean,
absolutely. And I think the one statistic that I saw was of our 4 victories, and I think we're giving up 5.5 points a game, whatever it may be. Is all those teams, that's Texas, Grambling, OU, and Washington, when they're not playing Ohio State, average about 40 points a game.
Yeah.
So it just goes to show, like how constrictive this defense is. And I think, to go back to, talking about the evolution of, getting comfortable, understanding a script, and maybe giving up some of those windows, as you got deeper into the football game and you make those in-game decisions, what you saw show up, and we'll go back to the guy that you pointed out with Arvell Reese, is like, when you close those windows that were available maybe on the first drive or the second drive, and you close those windows, and Damon Williams has to hold that football, and because he's a superior athlete, he wants to take off and run, you then saw Matt Patricia truthfully playing chess by having Arvell Reese in that spy position, knowing he's going to tuck it and try to win with his legs because he can't now throw it with his arm, and Arvell Reese just run him down, like the samurai sword that we describe him as.
Yeah. I just thought the other thing on display, and it's been on display the whole season, but really when you're going against a Damon Williams type quarterback, or Damon Williams, let's just say going against Damon Williams, the patience and the discipline the front 4 had to pretty much the term Caleb Downs used in Wednesday of last week, describing what was going to be important about containing him, was the defensive front, especially forming that cage. You know what I mean? Where, you know what, I'm not going to I don't have outside contain here, and all of a sudden I'm going to swoop inside, and then he will just zoop out around you, which you see some undisciplined defenses do, where they lose that outside contain of a quarterback like that, and he takes off running, and everybody, if you're in man or whatever, the fire alarm goes off, and are you going to get him 20 yards down the field? That remains to be seen. The discipline with which the front 4 played that game on almost every play was obvious, right?
It was. And Tim, and I think what you saw show up, and I know it's now been described as like the mush rush, at least the internet is calling it the mush rush. And I think maybe Larry Johnson and Matt Patricia, again, the defensive linemen are always going to give up, 20 to 50 pounds to an offensive lineman. But this is the perfect situation where if we don't feel like we need to blitz, and we can hold up on the back end. You've got Arvell Reese as a spy, or even Sonny Styles being able to run down Damon Williams. Why run up the field and create those lanes for Damon Williams to just want to take off and run, and potentially even outrun Sonny or Arvell Reese, which you really didn't do all that often. But you have, Edric Houston and, Kaden McDonald and Kaden Curry, who are, they're, from 245 to 285 pounds going against 300, inferior athletes at 330 plus, offensive linemen. So they just kind of stabbed them and created separation and just read the play. And you get, again, that cage that you're talking about was also described as like a must rush, when they're just at the line of scrimmage, mirroring the offensive lineman, waiting for, because again, it's where that front 4 or front 5 or 6, whatever you want to call it, married up with the defensive backs, covering type, playing match quarters, playing man, closing those windows like we talked about. And then you just kind of knew as the game went on and you closed those windows that Damon Williams by nature wants to take off and run and extend. and you had the availability to pop off those blocks and frustrate him, hit, even if you don't take him to the ground, it's hitting him when he throws the football, and that wears on a quarterback over time.
Yeah, I thought the most demonstrative play of what Ohio State did to him was basically the last play that really mattered, when Kayden McDonald from nose tackle, comes right up the gut and sacks him. I mean,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, it was like you're talking about that's near the end of the game, not in the third quarter. Kayden McDonald is the biggest man on that defensive front, still had stamina and get after it ability, and makes the final really play. It's a testament not just to the defense, not just the way the front four is playing, but Kayden McDonald, who's reshaped himself. Maybe doesn't look like it to a lot of people.
Yeah.
He's a lot trimmer.
Yes.
He's a lot more athletic than he was even a year ago. Talk about the weight. He lost some weight, but what he really did was he added muscle and took off the baby fat, for want of another term.
Well,
right?
Tim, that's the one. And again, I've mentioned him already one time, and it's like Mickey Marotti doesn't want his name rattled off, for any type of credit, but yet every coach and player can basically dedicate who they've become as a player, again, in combination with their position coach, to the work of Mickey Marotti, because like anything, you spend 50% more time with the strength coach in a Power 4 football program than you actually do with your position coach.
Yeah.
So, that bond, that work, and I'm sure in the offseason, that dedicated plan to, you're a really good player. We need to cut 15 pounds and put on 10 pounds of the right weight. So it's like, it might only be a 5-pound weight loss, but you look like a completely new player. You're twitchier, you're stronger, your PRs went through the roof. You look in the mirror and you look like more of a bodybuilder than you do a football player, as opposed to like a kind of like a tubby sophomore who's got soft gooiness about him. There's a reason why he's, I don't say survived, maintained from one head coach to the next, and not that there's been that much turnover at Ohio State, but I'm sure he's, a lot of other programs have potentially been trying to pluck him. I don't know that to be true, but I would assume that's a fact. But he stayed, and he is just one of the most beneficial players to, again, better than any shiny object or some facility. What Mickey Marotti does for Ohio State football is as important as to what Mark Pantoni does for Ohio State football, as does Ryan Day for Ohio State football.
I was going to say, who were the first two guys that Urban Meyer brought with him from Florida were Mickey Marotti and Mark Pantoni. He understood even back then their worth, their value.
Absolutely.
Before we move on real quick, I want to ask you one other thing about that. How difficult is it for – I know it's a two-way street. It has to be a two-way street. For example, let's take Kayden McDonald. I think Kayden McDonald's always been a hard worker. Don't get me wrong about that. But how difficult is it to convince, like when you were a player, to convince you, hey, if you follow this, this, and this, you're not going to see it in a month, but you're going to see it in 3 months. You're going to see in 5 months what we're talking about here. How tough is it for a player to buy into that? Because everybody has their habits. Everybody has their favorite treat, from fast food. I won't name fast food places, but everybody has their favorite treat. And to go from eating that to eating salmon,
or salad.
But does it show you as much the player's desire to become that kind of, that kind of specimen as it does Mickey Marotti's vision for him?
It absolutely does. And I think in some cases, you just said Mickey Marotti's vision, but I think in many cases, a lot of what we're talking about, these plans or goals or visions that, get created and then get executed, it happens in the shadows of the offseason. So say, again, you won a national championship last year, so your season ends in January or early February, whenever it was. And then you get some time off. And then I'm sure position coach and, also the coaching staff in general sit down and talk about the current roster.
Yeah.
Who, what, where, when, why, and they create some boards, some very early boards, and they talk about, we need to get this guy doing that. We need to do this with this guy. And then what happens is it's very collaborative. And I'm sure every program does it. It's just not detailed for the media or the fans to even understand but then it's just a series of sit downs. It's a sit down with, and I'll use him as an example, McDonald sits down with the strength and conditioning staff and go, this is our plan for you, and you get the buy-in from the player, and then it's also Larry Johnson and the defensive coaches, potentially sitting down, even in a one-on-one situation, not in a group setting, but in a one-on-one, because you have time and to do this in the off season. And it makes it very relatable. And you sit down and you go, our plan for you is, this is the role we see you in. And it creates this vision or this path towards, again, for a kid like Kayden McDonald, why you came to Ohio State to be the starting defensive tackle on an elite defense in the scarlet and gray. And every kid's going to buy into that, right?
Yeah.
And then they detail what that work looks like. And you get the buy-in of the player to go, okay, I need to stop doing this. I need to do more of this. I need, again, it could be recovery. It could be sleep. It could be, again, everyone's in the weight room. Everyone's getting faster, right? But it could be some of those habits that sometimes happen away from the Woody that need to change, that match what happens when you're at the Woody. And those sometimes for 18, 19, 20-year-olds, it's habits, it's discipline. And you think you have it, but then you enter this elite culture, with what's on the line for a school like Ohio State, which in many cases is national championship or bust type of mentality around that building, around that campus, and around that football program. And you need to match that intensity as a player. And it's not for everybody. Yep. And that's why you'll see 5-star, 4-star kids, and I know we've detailed this before in the past, just never hit in a Buckeye uniform, or a late bloomer in a Buckeye uniform, or those guys that just come right in. Jeremiah is, a hatched type of player, but I'm just saying, like, Bo Jackson, Bo Jackson was playing high school football a year ago.
Yes.
And now he's a double-digit carry guy for the number one team in the country.
Yes.
That takes a special type of kid. That takes a special type of body or God-given gifts for them you to be able to do that as a freshman. But for those that it doesn't happen to, in this case we're talking about Kaden McDonald, it's that planning that is very collaborative with the staff and young man. And you get real. You peel back the onion, and you don't embarrass or demean. You just get honest. And the kid knows it too at his core. In some cases, it might take the parents, or their surrounding little inner circle to go, dude, you got a great opportunity to be an awesome player for us this year, but this is what it's going to take.
Yeah.
So that's, you get real, you get honest. And I think that's an earned relationship, that happens inside of a not just Ohio State, but a college football program where you can get like that with a kid, and the kid's not going to take offense, and his ego is not going to be damaged, but he's going to just bust his butt to be what he's become. And through 4 games, he's going to be extremely happy with some of the sacrifices and the discipline that he's really taken on this past offseason.
Yeah, I agree. There was a great underrated sports movie came out in the, I think, late 70s, whatever, maybe early 80s, called Vision Quest. It's starring Matthew Modine. And ironically, it was filmed in, I just got back from the state of Washington, the highest tax state, it felt like, in the entire world. But I digress. 10.35% sales tax. Are you kidding me?
$120 to fill your tank.
Yeah, and that's if you have cash. It's another 10 cents a gallon if you use your credit card. Whatever. I don't understand how people, but I won't get into that. But that was filmed. This movie, movie was filmed in Spokane, over on the east side of the state. But this Vision Quest, and the guy worked to fulfill his vision, And when you have a group of players who buy into pretty much the same idea, really, it's really the same idea. You got to do this, and this to get good enough to beat this guy, and this guy, and then right on down the line, then it comes together like we saw on Saturday. It was a collection, and great defenses are like this. It's a collection of great individuals making plays, right? And then, like you said, now if you're an offensive coordinator, who are you going to run the protection toward? Kenyatta Jackson or Kaden Curry? Oh, wait a minute, here's Kaden McDonald coming up the middle. Here's Tywan Malone coming on. Here's Edric Houston. We know his ability. When he really hits his stride, it does present quite the conundrum for upcoming offensive coordinators, right? It
definitely does. And one other little mini epiphany is I do have my computer open with, some of the game stats and so on.
Yeah.
And it just popped into my head, but it allowed me to cross-reference it against my thought. And I went, this defense is playing as well as it is and as stingy as it is. And aren't even getting a bunch of turnovers yet.
Right.
So like we're not giving up a lot of yards, we're not giving up a lot of points, and we're also not giving, the offense, we're not even really like forcing the offense into a bunch of mistakes. We're just that good right now that they're not making a bunch of mistakes.
Yeah.
And we're not forcing a bunch of fumbles. Maybe we're not punching at the football. And again, how does a Matt Patricia, Larry Johnson, James Laurinaitis, Tim Walton continue to stay hungry? Is to stay perfect in the loss column with that goose egg there, which is, ultimately, to your point, to open the show, the big goal defensively. But maintain, the red zone success, maintain the lack of points that you're giving up. But then how do you level up? You continue doing those things and emphasize some of these other things, which is taking the football away.
Yeah.
And that's always, as a defensive player, not giving up points. You win a lot of football games, but winning the turnover battle. And I know that, again, Washington was an amazing challenge for this football team on the road in a hostile environment. But there's going to be, other games. We know what's coming at the end of this regular season. We know we've got Penn State in a couple of weeks. Again, I'll say Minnesota in its own right at night is going to present some challenges, given PJ Fleck and his success as a head football coach there. So but start turning the football over and also be super stingy. I mean, you're talking an echelon that, college football probably hasn't seen maybe since some of the Saban years, when Bama was at its best in the late, 2000 teens.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll tell you what, Ohio State back in the mid-'70s, man, 73 defense, for example. I mean, they just put strangleholds on people. It was quite the thing to watch. And I was still living in Texas then, but I was so taken by Ohio State defensively. Offensively, they were in the Stone Age, but that's another story, which cost them really. But it is what it is.
Some folks like me, football in the 1970s kind of feels like the Stone Age.
Yeah, yeah. It was. Well, you weren't even
pre-birth.
When were you born, by the way?
81.
You have to watch actual film. When coaches talk about film, you actually do have to watch actual film to go back to there.
To watch it. I got to crank it to watch it.
Or film to video. Yeah. But go back and watch some of those 1973 highlights, man, of the way they played defense, the Buckeyes. That was as good a collection of defensive players you're going to see on any team, anytime. But I digress. Real quick before we go. You brought him up. I wanted to ask you this. You're a defensive player, and let's say you're watching video of Ohio State's offense, but you're watching the running backs. What I will tell you, let me tell you my idea, but I want to get it from I'll get it from your side because nobody cares about what I think. What sets Bo Jackson apart? Because the other two guys are really good ball players, but Bo Jackson always seems to find that little crack, that little thing where he can always be gaining a yard. Even if you have him as a tackle for loss, he's still going to be falling a yard farther forward than you would have gotten him. You understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Yes, I do.
What sets those kind of running backs apart? What is
here's what I'll say. And again, it popped into my head because when I watched Bo Jackson, knowing that we were going to talk about it, each and every week after hopefully the continuation of the Buckeye victories is, here's the one thing that I'll always say. You're right. He always seems to find the crack, and the good running backs all do.
Yeah.
The great running backs, and I'm not deeming him great and anointing him great, but he's playing great.
Yes.
Is they never get hit square, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So he never gets hit, to your point, be able to fall forward for that yard. Sometimes running backs get squared up by one, and then another guy comes in and they fall sideways, they go backwards.
Yeah.
Bo Jackson has this innate ability to hit those creases extremely hard. He just never gets hit square, so he's always getting skinny and like rolling out of something and turns 5 into 7, 7 into 9. And then, or 9 into 9.5 when, by falling forward and, extending the ball. He just got this innate ability to just not get hit square and just enough shiftiness so that the fitting linebacker or safety just doesn't corral him, at the knees, at the hip level where it kind of stymies his momentum. and he just roll, again, even if they do, he just spins out of it and just continues to roll forward. So he is just, I think, such a gift. And I know we'll talk about it every week.
Yeah.
But again, Peoples only seeing 3 carries in the football game. It's all based on game flow. But I think Bo Jackson has earned the right to tote the pill as much as he did. I do love the fact that the running styles of all 3 to me is all different.
Yes.
I think the running styles of C.J. Donaldson and Bo Jackson, if those are your lead dogs right now, is also extremely different. Where Bo Jackson is like your slippery, smooth runner, right, with that home run capability. And I think C.J. Donaldson's a little bit more of the Punisher right now. Almost in some cases. I know the body styles are different as well, but Travion is more like the Bo Jackson, and Quinshon Judkins is more like the C.J. Donaldson, like the Punisher.
Yep.
And then you've got another, 4-star kid and James Peoples waiting in the wings, who unfortunately has been bypassed by an elite freshman football player in Bo Jackson. But that being said, I think didn't Bo Jackson miss a day or was, questionable at some point during the week? So, in the Big Ten, if we're going to run the football, which it seems like we're always going to do, I think also what a lot of people don't think about is
punishment.
What this run game has done to take some of the pressure off of Julian Sand.
Yep.
To be able to turn around and hand it off and be in 2nd and 5 and not in 2nd and 8. And that's also a testament to the offensive line. I think I also heard Austin Seerveld has not allowed one pressure, not a sack, not a pressure all season long amongst the 4 football games. So he, captain, moving to an entirely new position and is better at his new position than he was at his position he played the entire season last year. So testament to him, testament to Tyler Bowen and that entire offensive line and the offensive line coach as well.
As I like to say, when you get moved to tackle, now you get to really show off what you're all about.
You get exposed because the amount of space. And I'm learning that that as the father of an offensive lineman. It's like at tackle, lots of space. I'm going to say center, little bit of space. You're in tight quarters, right?
Yeah.
Guard, little bit more space, but you're still, you're protected by, a guy to your left and a guy to your right.
Right.
When you're in tackle, you're kick stepping and you're seeing the elite guys that are being paid a book. And now I'll say it's usually, of course in the NFL, but now it's at college level. It's like these edge rushers are, via NIL, they're like 6'5", 245 pound, animals that are hunting quarterbacks.
Yes.
And we've got, again, we see what we have, or we had last year in Sawyer and JTT, but that's who you have to block, for 60 minutes. And again, amazing testament to the protection for Julian Sand. I think, some folks might nitpick Brian Hartline on play calling because it may not look the way it looked last year with Will Howard, or even in years past with some of the elite quarterbacks that we have playing in the National Football League, throwing the football down the field, or with Jeremiah just running by everybody. But we're able to get away with it. And I think it's just the same way I said with Matt Patricia, like building those layers. I think this Ohio State football offense is still learning about itself and exposing, who does what and what do they do best.
Yep.
And again, we've only played 4 football games, so we're a quarter of the way through the football season. And I think the best football for us offensively is still ahead of us.
Hey, real quick, I only had one play call question, okay, that I would question seriously, that just jumped out at me was all of a sudden they're at the goal line, 4th and goal, first possession. You have a chance to go up 7-0. And Ryan Day, let's go for it, right?
Love that.
And then they jump into basically the same formation they ran against Texas on the first 4th and goal down there. And any defense who's done any kind of homework, when you see 4 tight ends on the field and one of them at fullback, and they shift over and have an overload to the left side with their tight ends with a little flanker or the little wing off the other one. Where are they going to run the ball? And then they did run the ball there.
Yeah.
And then C.J. Donaldson gets stuffed because there were like more defenders finally there than there were blockers. My point is, of course there were, because you've seen this on video. See, that's where a Bo Jackson, in my mind, Bo Jackson sees that little crease right to the right, which you could see. and just makes one little step and boom, he goes right in there. I mean,
just to counteract, just again, I don't disagree with you, but I think to counteract from
but it took him forever to recover from that. Go ahead.
But a locker room culture, it was again, Ryan Day choosing to go for it is a locker room culture decision. Sure. Believe in your guys, and at some point, it's part of who we want to be. Ohio State, I'm sure Tyler Bowen and Brian Hartline and Ryan Day and every offensive lineman that starts, along that line with our 2-3 great backs want to be able to go, this is where we're going to run the football, and you can't stop us.
I understand that.
And you're on the road, and you want to make that statement, and you want to play that bully ball. And I get it. And props to Washington for stopping them. And I get the fact that, you couldn't recover it from a while until points, things loosened up and you got some points. But it's a mentality, and I think if anything, it's a learning lesson. And I think it's also now that it's you've lined up in it, and everyone in the world kind of probably thought you're going to line up into it. The challenge is for Brian Hartline with a multi-tight end set, or to your point, bringing Bo Jackson in the game. It's we're going to line up in the same thing. You think we're going to do the same thing, and we might be play bully ball, and then it's play action, and we release a levels route to both tight ends who get free in the corner of the end zone and somebody to flat, and you give Julian Sandys easy throws later down the road. So while you might look at it as a failure, I'm sure this coaching staff is going to want to fix it and be able to go, we want to run it here, and you block them upright, and then you score, or at least get the first down. But it also there's a learning lesson that comes from it, and it allows Brian Hartline later down the road to build off of that failure into future successes.
Yeah, absolutely. Like they brought Bo Jackson in the game. They had 2 backs in the game several plays before that, and they ran that little sneaky little like flip reverse kind of thing with him. And of course, I'm the defense. I'm alert to the fact, number one, they look like 2 running backs in the game. Number 1, number 2, 25. We know what he's all about. You know what I mean? So kind of like
and again, I have to say it. My favorite play, favorite play, and it goes back to like knowing exactly what you're going to get from the defense, and you call this scripted play in this situation, is the Jeremiah Smith touchdown.
Yes.
The clear outs with the under route, and then he gets vertical. It's like it's probably was run 3 to 5 times in practice versus our scout team. In the exact coverage that Washington was going to be in the red zone and I'm sure it looked exactly the same way in practice versus our scout team, the way that it did, as easy as it looked in the football game.
Boy, I keep reminding people, though, that's literally, go back and watch it, literally the same play they ran against Oregon for the first touchdown. Of course, that play went 50 yards or whatever. This one went 13. Yeah. But the point was, you have seen that play too, Washington, but Washington's going to blitz, right? Yep. You're inside the red zone.
And there's going to be that void between, defensive secondary and the defensive front.
And still had to keep his cool right there, because there were a couple of guys standing there defensively. You had to throw in between, through the picket fence a little bit, and he put the ball. I mean, it's funny because I'd gotten a text from Graham Rahal, race car driver, but I've known him since he was 0 years old. But he goes, "What's wrong with this offense?" I said, and I texted him back something to the effect of nothing that can't be fixed by getting the ball to Jeremiah Smith, number 4. You know, and then boom, 2 plays later, touchdown. Dude, that was such a huge play, because it gives you a 7-3 lead at the half. The thing is flipped. You should have had a touchdown at the beginning of the game, which you didn't get. It would have been a different first half if that first one had gone in, right? And then you had the fumbled punt after that fumbled punt return. So all these things, that was such a learning experience on the road, one of the more hostile environments, but was tempered by, last thing I'm going to ask you, I keep bringing it up, but it's just a marvel to me. Buckeye Nation is a real thing.
Oh, yes.
It is a real thing. I estimated 8,000 to 10,000. There probably was more than that of Ohio State fans.
And that's only a 55,000 person stadium.
No, 72,000 seat stadium.
Okay, 72.
But at the end of the game, when I took this video, all the Washington fans had left. And this video of all these Ohio State fans, and you still see them up on the other stands and stuff. If you watch my video while Ohio State's singing Carmen, Ohio, at least the guys who know the words to it. It always helps when you have a teleprompter, aka the scoreboard, right? Because it is a hard song to memorize.
If you played enough football games, you learn it really quickly.
But my point is, Matt, what does that mean? It's like a high school. where high school team where everybody in town follows the team, like you guys, when you go on the road, Lakewood St. Ed's, y'all know you're going to have a core of your parents and high school, students there rooting you on because you're a big time program. But what does that do for a college team? I mean,
it just goes to show, and I'm sure a lot of times young men first of all, I mean, you walk into the Horseshoe and it's like, and there's just 3,000 fans in the opposite color, right?
Yeah.
And it just goes to show like how you want to lock down every home seat you possibly can for Buckeye Nation, and that sliver that's given to players and family and band members' family is really all they get. Yeah. Or they're going to have to pay through the nose, like we kind of saw Tennessee do last year to have any orange in our stadium. It's what makes it great. It's the, world's largest alumni base, so not only are you going to, and again, I've lived this out for 20 some odd years of my life now. When people recognize me, and it doesn't happen all that often, but it's like, or they just know that you're a Buckeye. It's like, they could be working in Seattle, Washington for some tech company.
Yeah.
And when Ohio State comes to town, they and their buddies all buy tickets to come see their Buckeyes because they probably don't get back to Columbus all that often to see games in the Horseshoe. So there's just an immense amount of pride, and I think it also goes to show what the head football coach and what the quarterback and all these players, the pressure that they're under is because the expectations of Buckeye Nation, and I say it's beat the team up north every year, and compete for a national championship every single year. And as you look around college football and I'll just use Clemson as an example, off to a 1-2 start, and after all of Dabo Swinney's success at Clemson, this slow start with a very, very good football team where they develop, they win, they recruit well. They haven't just started now hitting the portal, to fill in those little bit of voids. But if it doesn't go well, they start to call for your head soon, after 3 football games. So you have to know what you're getting yourself into when you want to be a part of Buckeye football.
That's it. Well, Matt Wilhelm definitely was a huge part of it as an All-American, as a Super Bowl winning champion football player. I could throw more accolades on you, but I want your head to get any bigger, or you might have to increase the size of that cap.
You're going to walk out of my office here in a minute, so thank you.
There you go. Yeah, go take the trash out, Matt.
I'm on my way.
Ladies and gentlemen, Matt Wilhelm. Matt, we'll see you again next week, my man.
Absolutely, Tim. Thank you.
Always enjoy, I don't know if it comes through or not, I always enjoy my conversations with Matt Wilhelm. And he went a little long with me today because obviously Clay Hall is not available. Clay Hall will be coming back into the starting rotation starting Friday, I do believe, if it all goes well for Clay Hall. But I thought we touched all the bases, plus ran around the bases about 50 more times in that conversation, just about the impact of a win like that, the impact of making plays by defensive players, and what that can mean down the road, Buckeye Nation, and what it means to this football team. This is a special situation that's not par for the course across the country, but there are quite a few programs that do have a following like Ohio State. But I'm telling you, I don't know if anyone's bigger following than Ohio State. But the bottom line is what that win on the road to start the Big Ten does for this team, this Ohio State #1 team in the country. It matters a lot. Tell you what matters also a lot is being able to have an offense that scores or gives you some reason to cheer. That's why I'm only wasting about 25 seconds on this podcast on the Browns and the Bengals. Are you kidding me? If I was I don't know if season ticket holders, maybe the right term, because sometimes they play on the road, obviously, but I'd be very upset with the Bengals on both sides of the ball, and then the Browns. I mean, whether they move on from Flacco, Joe Flacco, he had his day, but his day is gone, I do believe, and I don't know why you can't get the Dylan Gabriel sooner rather than later, but we'll see where that goes. But sometimes there's just that time for a change. So we'll see where that goes in terms of what the Browns end up doing at quarterback. With that said, we know what Ohio State's going to do at quarterback. I'm just saying, Yeah, I like to say that a lot. But I'm just saying is handling business and getting really better, almost from possession to possession, much less game to game, kind of like what we watched Will Howard do the year before, and ended up being a national championship quarterback. And we'll see where Ohio State goes in terms of its running back situation. Everybody's worried about who's starting, et cetera. Well, Bo Jackson the last 3 weeks has gotten the lion's share of the carries and produced the lion's share of the yards. Whether he starts on the very first play of the game or goes in on play 8, it doesn't really matter. It looks like, he would be, I would call their featured back right now in terms of a guy you can count on to get a yard or two, even when things go a little bit messy in front of him. So, and he's a freshman. And like we talked about, they're going to need all three of those guys, James Peoples, C.J. Donaldson, as this season ensues. But it'll be interesting once again this week against Minnesota, how much Bo Jackson plays and what kind of role he plays in this game. So without further ado, let's get to the end. What the heck? Y'all been listening for a long time, because we got another Tim May show featuring Clay Hall coming up on Friday before Ohio State gets ready to host Minnesota on homecoming weekend, on Hall of Fame weekend, Ohio State Hall of Fame weekend. So until next time, we'll see you then.